Hi, Dominica here from easysewingforbeginners.com. In this video today I'll be showing you how I use my inkjet printer to print on fabric at home, and later on in the video as well I'll be showing you what I use to treat my fabric with to make the fabric hold the printing and be washable as well. Okay, so let's get started. For this you will need your inkjet printer, and I recommend a printer with pigment-based ink as opposed to dye-based ink. Okay, and if you want to know more about that, then I've got a link to the blog post in the YouTube description box. You will need freezer paper. I also use 100% cotton fabric, and I prefer it to be pre-washed. You will need some kind of sharp, very sharp cutting tool, whether that be a rotary cutter or a pair of scissors. I'm using my rotary cutter today. You will also need your iron as well as your ironing board. Okay, so let's get started. Okay, so I have my fabric here and I've got the freezer paper ready as well. I've just cut it slightly larger than a piece of printer paper. So for me it's slightly larger than an A4 piece. If you use letter size paper, then it would be slightly larger than that. Okay. What I'm going to do in this step is iron the freezer paper onto the fabric. So on your freezer paper you notice you have a dull side and you'll have a shiny side. So I hope you can see the difference there. Okay, we're going to iron the freezer paper so this shiny waxy side sticks onto the fabric. So I like to put the fabric piece on the bottom and the freezer paper on top, and then use a hot dry iron to press the freezer paper onto the fabric. So I usually just like to press and just iron from the middle outwards. Okay, and when the freezer paper is all stuck onto the fabric, then we will be ready to cut the paper to size. Okay, so for this next step we're going to cut our fabric and freezer paper piece to size. Now, like I said before, my printer takes an A4 size piece of paper. So what I'm going to do to make this easier is I'm going to use a piece of the printer paper to trace around onto my freezer paper so I can cut it out from there. Okay, so I'm going to be tracing onto the freezer paper side. Let's place my template piece of paper on top and simply just trace around it. Okay, so now I've got my lines there ready to cut out. So like I said at the beginning, I recommend using a really sharp pair of scissors or sharp rotary cutter. And the main reason why I recommend your cutting tool to be sharp is you'll have less fraying, because the more the edge is frayed, the more chance you have of the ink smearing while it's printing. And you can see on this piece of paper, I'll just see, hopefully it will focus there for you. You can see it has little frays like this. So having those little frays on the edges will most probably cause the printer to smear. Okay, so I'm not going to use that piece. That one was in my throwaway pile. Got my sharp tools and I'm going to cut this new piece. Okay. Okay, so now we've got a freshly prepared piece of paper almost ready to go into the printer. There's just a couple of other things that I like to do just to make sure it goes through the printer smoothly. Okay, this is an optional step, but I highly recommend it. I'm going to be giving this just one last iron just to make sure the corners are pressed down nicely, and then I'm going to go over it with a lint brush, a sticky lint brush, just to get all those little bits of hair and thread off the top of it as well. Okay, anything to reduce the chance of the ink smearing. Alright, so with this step, it's very important that you just press really gently, because if you move the iron around, then you might cause the edges to fray up, and we don't want that fraying. Okay. Okay. And once we've done that press, just grab your lint brush if you've got one and very carefully roll it over your fabric to get all those little hairs and little bits of fluff off. And once you've done that, we're ready to put it through the printer and print. Okay, so I've got the paper in the printer all ready to go. I'm using the Word program here on my Mac, and I've got my images all set up. Got my beautiful little girl here, Elise. So the next thing I'm going to do is go to print, and I've got my Epson XP410 selected. Now on my computer here, I need to go to media and quality just to change a few of the settings. I like to put it onto photo, and I'm going to change the quality to best. Okay, and I do that because the printer will print a little bit slower and use a little bit more ink, and you'll get a really good printout from doing that, and less smearing as well if it does that. Okay, and I'm going to hit print, and off it goes. And this is what it looks like when it's all printed out. Now you can see the corners might have lifted a little bit. There's a little bit of smearing in this corner up here and just up the top, but overall it came out looking pretty good. Now what I would do is I'd leave this to dry overnight or for a couple of hours at least before I sew it into my sewing project. If you would like to see what else I do to it just to treat it to retain the ink a bit more if it's going to be washed, then keep on watching. But if not, thank you for watching. I hope it's helped, and don't forget to like and leave a comment down below. Okay, so there's one last step that I do if I'm going to be washing my sewing project, and I found that treating the fabric with retain after it's been printed helps the fabric hold the ink a little bit better. Okay, so I'm going to show you how I would do it just by treating one piece of fabric here. Okay, so I've got about maybe 2.5 centimeters or an inch of water in my container here, and I'm going to add a capful of retain. Swirl it around. Alright, now this is a piece that I'd printed previously and left to dry overnight. So I'm just going to remove the freezer paper from the back of it. It will come off. Okay, finally. Okay. And then what I do is lay my fabric flat in there. And it says to leave it in here for about 20 minutes and to just keep swirling it around. Oh, now I forgot to mention that the water in here is warm to hot temperature, but it's got all the instructions on the side of the bottle in case you're not quite sure. Okay, so I'll keep doing this for about 20 minutes or so. Okay, so once that's been treated for about 20 minutes, what it recommends you do next is rinse it in cold water. Then I'd leave it to dry and give it an iron before I add it into my sewing project. Okay, and that's it. That's my tutorial for how to print on fabric. I hope you found it useful. If you have, hit the like button and leave a comment down below. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel to keep up to date with all my new tutorials. Thanks for watching. Hello, since you're still hanging around, I thought I'd show you my comparison test pieces that I did when I was testing this whole printing on fabric thing. So up here I've got the piece that I printed originally on my Brother printer that had dye-based ink, and this is what happened to it when I washed it. Okay, so you can see that pinky orangey colour text there, that was black before I washed it. So you can see what happens to the dye-based inks. This one here, this is the test piece, or the one that I printed out during the video. So you can see how nice and bold the colours are once it's been printed. And these two down here is just a comparison. This is the piece that I printed with the Epson with the pigment-based ink, and this is what it looks like after it's been washed in the washing machine on a cold water wash. And then this is the piece that was treated with the retain and then washed in the washing machine. So you can see just even a comparison with these two here, that the retain just does help a little bit if you're going to be washing it. If you're not going to be washing it, then there's probably no reason to treat it, and you can leave it as that, and you have nice bold colours that will hang around for quite a while. Okay, thank you. I'm really going now. Bye.